Hey, my name is Brian Doak. I am an academic author of 6 books and like 50 articles. I have a PhD in Near Eastern languages and civilizations. I'm a professor and a university administrator, and I love technology. I love ChatGPT. I'm so excited about these new developments in AI. And so naturally, the question comes up for me as a teacher of students and even as a researcher myself, how do I ethically use AI tools in a way that I'm not cheating and I'm not pretending I'm doing something that I'm not doing? Let's explore. First, a qualification. If you are a college student in a class, the #1 guide that you have for what you can and cannot do with something like ChatGPT or Bard or any of these other AI language models, I'll just refer to these as the AI language, the AI. Your #1 guide for what you can and cannot do is your professor, your instructor. Typically, every class has a syllabus that lists policies and guidelines. You always follow that, not just random things you saw in a video. But if you're looking for guidance and if you don't have anything like that, or maybe even if you are a professor out there and you're looking for some kind of structure for thinking about teaching and what's okay and what's not okay, then this video is meant for you. Why, as academics, and why in college papers, do we even cite anything at all? Why do we even bother to say where we got information? Why are we so uptight about this? In the ancient world, authors would often just totally plagiarize each other with no consequence. They would steal each other's sentences, lines, poems, and really there was no concrete idea of an author as a unique creative soul until much later in human history. In fact, many people point to the 1800s, the Romantic period, as a period where in the West at least, authors really became authors in the sense that they were creatives who had unique ideas that needed to be treasured for their own particular tortured uniqueness. And thus, if you borrowed something from someone else, you had to be very clear about where you got that. Our modern academic culture follows in that tradition. Why? I mean, in summary, it's because when we want to engage in the world of ideas, when I want to do that as a scholar, I have to show when I write something, a book, an article, whatever it is, I have to show where in the history of ideas my idea fits. And in order for my contribution, say a journal article, to be accepted by a journal, I need to show not just one person, not just the editor of the journal, but I need to show my peers, other scholars who are going to read this and who are going to vet it and check it and either recommend it for publication or not. I need to show them that I understand the history of my own discipline, and I need to show them that I have something creative and original to contribute. Otherwise, we're just wasting people's time, right? So to do that, the act of citation, of footnotes, of parenthetical, of works cited and bibliographies is really, really crucial. Because that academic intellectual product is so special, and because the act of trying to find out what's true and right and real and accurate is so difficult, I need to document every step of that. And I cannot lie to my colleagues, and I cannot pretend. It needs to be authentic, and it needs to be very careful. When you then come to college, you are engaging with me, you're engaging with your professors in that academic task. You are becoming scholars in the making. You might not think of yourself as a scholar or an academic, but that's precisely what you're doing. You came to college, you chose that, and you're gonna have to start to abide by these standards. And by learning to think in a scholarly way and like an academic, you're gonna become more organized and you're gonna become sharper in your own thinking. And you're gonna be able to situate your own ideas within the history of ideas in a way that you're gonna find is really powerful and compelling. This is why academics do citation the way that we do. This is why we care. All right, finally, the payoff. Let's go through some examples about using AI, something like ChatGPT or Bard or Claude or any of these new systems. What in a college context typically would constitute not cheating at all, total fair use and normal? What would be a gray area where really you need to think about what you're doing? You maybe need to cite the AI model you're using, say that you're using it, maybe talk to your professor, and what would just be clear and obvious cheating, academic lying, or plagiarism, taking someone else's words and pretending that they are your own words. Let's go through some examples of each. Okay, so not cheating. Here's an example of what I think a lot of people would consider not cheating. Not cheating involves using very broad level searches to find very broad level information, which you will then specify and embody and narrow down in your own work. For example, let's say you were asked to read Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, very popular piece of literature. You probably read it in high school. And let's say you were asked to write a 2-page reflection paper on any major theme that you see there. And let's say you read it, but you're like, a theme, I'm not really sure. There's love, there's death. What are the themes really? What are even the options? Let's say you went to ChatGPT, which I'll do right now. And let's say you asked, hey, can you give me a list of major themes in Romeo and Juliet? The response you get, certainly, here are some major themes. Now this list I'm seeing has 8 major themes. And you get kind of some keywords and then a colon and then a much longer description, a couple of sentences. Any of these phrases that appear before the colon, I'll read some of them, like love, fate and destiny, conflict and violence, youth and impulsiveness. These are all what I would consider to be very broad level things that almost any reader of the play could recognize as themes. If you decided to do that and to pick one of those as your theme, then you set this aside, you set the ChatGPT aside, you set AI aside, and you go and then you use text from the play to demonstrate that. That is a totally fine use of AI. You're using it kind of like you'd use a conversation with a friend to prompt very general level advice, right? And I think that is the key, the generality of it. The fact that it's 1 or 2 words, the fact that it's a big level thing, that all pushes it in favor of being able to use it. You probably wouldn't have to say, I used ChatGPT to come up with the theme of love in Romeo and Juliet. It's really obvious. It's kind of like material, maybe you could even think of it like material if you watch a movie trailer. It's like really blatant stuff like that you can tell right away. Oh, it's a Mission Impossible movie. I guess there will be spies and, car chases and motorcycles off cliffs. Like everyone kind of knows that. That's not specific information. You don't need to cite, I read, Time Magazine, July 2023, the Mission Impossible movies involve spycraft. It's like everyone knows that. That's what I mean by broad, generally shared information. And if you use an AI tool to get that kind of information as a prompt, I think that's fine. I think a lot of people would see that as fine. You still, as you can see on the screen here, when they generate these prompts with these themes, they have more information than just, conflict and violence, youth and impulsiveness. They have sentences. You can't take those sentences and just copy and paste them into a paper. If you did that, you have to put quotation marks around it, even if you change a word or two. You're still taking information from somewhere else. You can't really easily make that your own by just copying it and putting it in a paper. So that's different. Do you see the difference here between the very broad and between now very specific wording, including whole sentences and phrases? You've gone a little bit farther. Now you've started to enter a gray area or perhaps even into blatant cheating if you did that without attributing. And notice what the key difference is. This is the key. The key is, did you put those quotation marks around it and did you say where you got it? And that goes not only for ChatGPT or AI, that would also be for a book or a journal or an article or anything else where you get information, right? Let me be clear. Cheating in college on papers can have serious consequences. For example, a lot of universities have a policy that if you're caught cheating one time by a professor, that will be permanently noted on your file, but it's like a warning. At a lot of schools, the second instance can result in you being suspended from the university. That is serious, and it does happen. I have seen it happen, and it is real. I also happen to know, because I've seen this sadly happen with students, some students who want to apply for med school or something serious like that, they find out on the med school application that they are asked if they've ever been caught in a situation of academic dishonesty. And oh no, if they have, now they're faced with the choice of either they have to try to lie to the med school, and the med school often will check your application on specific questions, so you have to be careful, or you have to admit that you have cheated in the past and now come up with some big explanation for that, and you risk not being accepted. All of this is what you risk when you do the blatant examples of cheating or when you fail to communicate academically under the standards of your class or your university. You can see how as professors, we are wild creatures, professors. We're so intense about our standards and we're so intense about thinking and about organized thinking. And we're so intense about it because we love it and we care about it, and it produces and has produced certain results. Carefully thought out results that other people can examine and that people can trust. I think that's pretty important in our world today. And I think that you know that from watching the news and just seeing all of the noise and all of the disinformation that we all face. it's probably also worth mentioning, like, well, if we're gonna get this detailed, what about using like Microsoft Word? You know, sometimes they'll underline a word with that red squiggly underline that you spelled it wrong and you use their spell check. That's actually an AI tool. Is that legitimate? Can you do that? I think that there's been broad agreement among scholars, students, colleges that using a spell check tool does not constitute cheating, right? You may have assumed that, but I just want to point that out because actually we're not talking about black and white here. We're talking about gray areas. That is a computer system doing something for you that you might not have known. Which could raise all kinds of questions like, well, what if I use something like Grammarly? Grammarly is very popular. It's a tool that really explores your grammar on a more phrase-by-phrase basis or word choice and might make suggestions. I think overall most professors have agreed that something like Grammarly is okay, but there are even newer products, like at the time of this filming, there's a thing called Grammarly Go that does even deeper interventions into your writing process and begins now to act like an AI writing tool by even recrafting entire paragraphs and things like that. For me as a professor, that is now going over the line. That's going over the line. You don't just get to do that and have something recraft entire sentences for you and not say that you're doing that. Again, the line between what I think in this case is cheating and not cheating is just you being open about what you're doing. And this is a great case where I think you really should ask your instructor, ask your professor, what do you think about this? You know, show them the tool. Be like, is this something that is within the bounds of your academic standards? You're not going to find a shared statement of all standards about this for all colleges and all professors for all time. It's going to change. So I think now, once you get into that, you're now into a gray area where I think you just want to ask. I think the key here is just to be open about what you're doing. And you don't need to feel shame. I think professors now, for all but the very worst professors, professors now know what these AI tools are. And many professors are even experimenting with asking students to use them to generate outlines and drafts and things like that. So this shouldn't be forbidden territory, and you shouldn't have to feel shame about asking about how you can use it or how you can't. You do need to get really clear, though, about what you're doing. And if you're taking and copying things from the internet, whether that's AI or anywhere else, pasting that into a document and pretending that you wrote that you should feel shame about. That is just flat, straight up academic cheating. That is lying. Like, you are lying when you do that. You are lying to your professor. Is your professor somebody you want to be in a lying relationship with? Or do you want to be in that, that growing mentorship, thinking together type of relationship? I think you want the latter, right? So go for that. Don't do the lying, cheating thing, right? Okay, so the gray areas, we've already started to get into that. Here's another gray area that I think, this would be worth talking with your professor about. I don't know that this is not cheating, but I don't know that it is, which would be generating outlines through an AI tool. So let's say that I then went back into ChatGPT and I said, hey, can you give me a 3-page, an outline for a 3-page paper on Romeo and Juliet? Actually, I accidentally typed in Romeo and Julie. That's a totally different play. Okay. Romeo and Juliet, particularly on the theme of youth and impulsiveness. So say you liked that theme and you were like, okay, it will generate an outline for you. Now I'm looking at this outline. It's a pretty intense outline. It's got details. It's got full sentences. It's not just phrases and words. I think this is, if you literally followed this outline and used this, you'd really want to be careful not to just copy their phrases and their words. This has to be your words and your phrases and your ideas. But I think the ideas here are so detailed that I think this is something that you'd want to think about citing. How would you cite that? What would you do? Just like type in parentheses, by the way, I use ChatGPT for this? Well, maybe. I mean, that would be a very informal way of citing. Some professors will be very intense about using particular styles. Like there's a style of citation called Chicago style where you do footnotes. So you put the information down below. There are various styles, which I'll just call parenthetical citation styles, which would have you in the same sentence do a parentheses with the name of the author or maybe the tool and the page number or the year. So maybe for ChatGPT, a common citation style would be to say, if you did Roman numeral 3.c, analyze the tension between their idealized version of love and societal expectations and restrictions placed upon them. Say you use those exact words, you'd have to put them in quotes and then put in parentheses after that, ChatGPT and maybe the date on which you did that. That would be one simple way of acknowledging. That's how you guard yourself, though, against going from plagiarizing to citing a source and using a source in an appropriate way. So is an outline a gray area? Yeah, I think it is. I think it depends, though, how intense the outline is, how robust it is. This, to me, looks like a pretty robust outline. I would say you have to kind of be open about the fact that you're using it. Same thing would apply, I think, if you asked ChatGPT to generate a 5-paragraph or 5-page paper for you on the theme of youth and impulsiveness in Romeo and Juliet. but you didn't really copy it. You didn't copy and paste it. You just kind of looked at it and referred to it and kind of wrote some things on your own that were based on it. I think you have to say that you're doing that. I think you have to do a citation for that. I don't think that you can just pretend that that was just you with your own ideas. So you're starting to see like, well, if you can't do that, what can you do? It's like, well, maybe not a lot without having to cite it or say that you're using it. You can see these are powerful tools. They are awesome. We're going to find so many uses for these things that are going to transform our lives and hopefully make us, give us more leisure time, help us be more productive in the right ways, and guarantee universal basic income for everyone while machines do all our work and we become like just happy people living in a utopia. Maybe that won't be the future, but I think we are going to find some amazing uses for this stuff, right? But you cheating on college papers is not one of those uses, okay? So get clear about this, right? Do a gut check with yourself. Is this the kind of student you want to be? Can you use it? Yes. Do you need to say what you're doing and be open about what you're doing? I think also, yes, that's the key. We've talked about what is not cheating, using very broad themes and inspiration from single phrases or words. We've talked about gray areas, outlines, drafts, longer phrases, things like that. What is explicit cheating? We've mentioned it already, but I'll be explicit again. Copying entire paragraphs from an AI model and trying to pass them off as though they are your own independent thoughts. So I can go into ChatGPT again and say, hey, use this outline to write me a 5-paragraph essay on this topic. ChatGPT is happy to comply. Certainly, here is the essay, right? The title, Youth and Impulsiveness in Romeo and Juliet. And then they've got an introduction, paragraph 1, 2, 3. This is fully written out stuff. You cannot merely copy and paste those paragraphs or even sentences into a paper and put your name on the top and say that you wrote that. That is the most blatant, obvious form of academic dishonesty you can perpetrate as a student, okay? You cannot do that. Maybe you say, okay, maybe it'd be better off just not even to look at all, not even to go in there and do that stuff because it's just so tempting. Maybe that's the approach that you do need to take. Maybe in a controlled situation and with a professor's guidance, you can use it to do outlining, right? Depends on your class and where you are. Or maybe you kind of stop at that level of the broader themes. You use that for your inspiration. Now you put it away. Now you do that work. I'm pretty sure though that in the end, what you really want as a student, I know you want a diploma. I know you want a degree. I know sometimes you're in classes that you think, I don't want to take this class. This class is pointless. But here's something I've learned along my academic journey. I didn't always know at the time what I was going to need. I didn't always know what muscles of the brain or the soul or the heart, the mind, the spirit I was really going to have to develop. And when you go to college, you're putting your trust in a bigger system. You're paying a lot of money for this bigger system, right? You're putting a lot of trust in it to guide you in a particular way. So I'd suggest for you, take a chance, trust that process, go through with it. You want to know that you've engaged in the academic community in a practice that's been going on for hundreds, actually thousands of years, that you are learning and becoming creative, and that you're doing the things that you came to college to do. That's what citation is about. That's what writing is about. That's what thinking in college is about.